Hello, my friend. I hope you're doing well today. In this channel, we learn English through gentle historical stories, simple ideas, and meaningful moments. So take a breath, relax, and let's begin. Imagine standing on a balcony above the sea, with the warm wind of Alexandria brushing against your face, while below you, one of the greatest cities in the ancient world glows with ships, voices, and ambition. Now imagine knowing that one day, everything you see could be taken away. Tonight, I want to tell you the story of Cleopatra. Many people remember her as beautiful. Some remember her as dangerous. Others remember her only through the powerful Roman men connected to her life. But Cleopatra was more than a symbol of romance or scandal. She was a queen living in a brutal political world. She was highly educated, deeply strategic, and determined to protect her country while the Roman Republic was rising around her like a storm. Cleopatra was born in Alexandria in 70 or 69 BCE, into the Ptolemaic dynasty, a Greek-speaking royal family that had ruled Egypt since the time of Alexander the Great. She was born into wealth and ceremony, but not into safety. Even as a child, she grew up in a palace where love and trust could never be separated from power. Life inside Cleopatra's family was never peaceful. In the Ptolemaic court, brothers and sisters competed for the throne, and royal marriages within the family were part of tradition. Behind the beauty of palace life, there was fear, rivalry, and constant uncertainty. Her father, Ptolemy XII, ruled Egypt during a time when the country was still rich, but no longer fully secure. Rome was becoming stronger every year, and Egyptian independence was growing more fragile. Cleopatra grew up understanding something many people learn only much later in life. Being close to power does not mean you are protected by it, but she was different from many others in her dynasty. She studied seriously. Greek was her first language, but she also learned Egyptian, which was unusual for a ruler from her family. She seems to have valued knowledge, language, and the ability to speak directly to different people. That mattered. It made her more than a royal figure. It made her a ruler who understood connection. If this story already pulls you in, comment 1. When her father died in 51 BCE, Cleopatra became queen. But she did not rule alone. According to royal custom, she had to share power with her younger brother, Ptolemy XIII. On the surface, they ruled together. In reality, that arrangement was full of danger from the beginning. Cleopatra was young, but she was capable, politically aware, and ambitious. Before long, conflict grew between her and the advisors surrounding her brother. These men did not want a strong queen controlling Egypt. Little by little, Cleopatra lost her place in Alexandria and was eventually pushed out. She likely fled east toward Syria. Many people would have seen that as the end. But Cleopatra did not disappear. She gathered support. She planned carefully. She prepared to return. That is one of the reasons her story still feels alive today. She did not simply suffer loss. She answered it with action. While Cleopatra was in exile, Rome was tearing itself apart in civil war. Julius Caesar was pursuing his rival Pompey, and that struggle reached Egypt in a dramatic way. Pompey fled there hoping for support, but instead he was killed by men linked to the court of Ptolemy XIII. When Caesar arrived in Alexandria in 48 BCE, he was presented with Pompey's death as if it were a gift. It was not. He entered a city already filled with tension, and Cleopatra understood that this was her moment. Later writers told the famous story that she was smuggled in to meet Caesar wrapped in bedding or a carpet. The exact detail may never be fully certain, but the meaning of the story is clear. Cleopatra found a daring way to reach the most powerful Roman in the Mediterranean. That meeting changed the direction of her life. Cleopatra did not speak to Caesar like a helpless exile. She spoke like a ruler who believed she deserved her throne. He was far older than she was, already one of the most powerful men in the world, yet she impressed him. Maybe it was her intelligence. Maybe it was her confidence. Maybe it was her extraordinary ability to stay calm while risking everything. Caesar chose to support her. That decision led to fighting in Alexandria, where Caesar and Cleopatra's sides struggled against the forces of Ptolemy XIII. The conflict was dangerous and destructive. Some later accounts connect this period with damage to parts of Alexandria and perhaps to collections of books linked to the city's great learning, though historians still debate how much was truly lost. What is much clearer is the result. Cleopatra returned to power. Her brother died during the struggle, and she once again stood at the center of Egypt. For a while, her future may have seemed brighter than ever. Cleopatra became closely linked with Caesar, and she later had a son called Ptolemy XV, better known as Caesarion. She even traveled to Rome and lived there while Caesar stood near the peak of his power. Imagine what that must have felt like. A queen from Egypt, standing in the center of Rome, carrying herself not as a visitor from the edge of the world, but as someone connected to its future. But history can turn in a single moment. In 44 BCE, Caesar was assassinated by Roman senators who feared his growing power. Cleopatra suddenly found herself in a dangerous city without her greatest protector, so she returned to Egypt. Once again, the ground beneath her had shifted. Once again, she had to decide how to survive what came next. If you've ever had to stay calm while life changed all at once, comment, "I get it." After Caesar's death, Rome entered another season of struggle. New leaders rose, new alliances formed, and among the most powerful men to emerge was Mark Antony, one of Caesar's former allies. He took control of Rome's eastern territories, and because Egypt was wealthy and strategically important, Cleopatra soon entered his world. Their meeting at Tarsus became legendary. Ancient writers describe her arrival as unforgettable, full of beauty, luxury, and symbolism. But behind that spectacle was political intelligence. Antony needed money and stability in the east. Cleopatra needed protection and space to preserve Egypt's power. Their alliance became personal as well as political. They had children together, and for a time, the two of them seemed to imagine a future in which they could shape the eastern Mediterranean on their own terms. But every step they took also deepened the hostility of another Roman leader, Octavian. He was young, disciplined, and highly skilled at turning public opinion into power. He presented Antony not as a Roman leader making strategic choices, but as a man weakened by a foreign queen. Cleopatra became a target of Roman propaganda. She was portrayed as seductive, manipulative, and dangerous, a woman pulling Antony away from Rome and into Eastern luxury. That image lasted for centuries. It is one reason so many people still speak first about her beauty instead of her mind. But even hostile Roman voices reveal something without meaning to. They were afraid of her influence. They knew she mattered. They knew she was not simply standing beside history. She was trying to shape it. If this part of her story made you see Cleopatra differently, comment too. In 31 BCE, the tension between Antony and Octavian exploded into the Battle of Actium, a major naval conflict off the western coast of Greece. Antony and Cleopatra were defeated. After that, hope narrowed quickly. They returned to Egypt, but the balance of power had already broken against them. Allies disappeared. Fear grew heavier. Octavian advanced. In 30 BCE, the final collapse came. Antony, after receiving false news that Cleopatra was dead, fatally wounded himself. He was brought to her and died there. Cleopatra was then taken into Octavian's control. He seems to have intended to bring her to Rome and display her in his triumph. For a queen who had built her life around intelligence, dignity, and royal identity, that may have felt worse than death itself. Soon after, Cleopatra died in Alexandria. Ancient sources disagree about how. The old story says an asp bit her. Other accounts suggest poison. What seems most important is not the exact method, but the choice. She refused to let Octavian decide the final meaning of her life. With Cleopatra's death in 30 BCE, the Ptolemaic kingdom came to an end, and Egypt became part of Rome. She is remembered as the last ruler of her dynasty and, in a larger symbolic sense, the last pharaoh of independent ancient Egypt. Maybe that is why people still return to her story more than 2,000 years later. Not because she was perfect. She was not. Not because every decision she made was wise. It was not. But because she reminds us that intelligence can be a form of courage, that language can be power, and that the story history tells about a woman is not always the full truth of who she was. Thank you for staying with me through this journey. I hope this story helped you feel history a little more closely and English a little more naturally. If this story touched you, comment 3 and tell me which historical figure you'd love to hear about next. Until next time, keep listening, keep learning, and be gentle with yourself as you grow. Thank you for being here with me today. I hope this story made your English learning feel a little lighter and a little easier. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe and stay with me on this journey. And if there's a story or topic you'd like to hear next, leave it in the comments. I'd love to make more videos for you. Take care, keep learning, and I'll see you in the next story.